What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we are doing my review of Weapons, the newest horror film in theaters right now, garnering so much attention and buzz around the world. This movie is huge right now, so much so that it's conquering the box office with stuff like Fantastic Four and Superman still in theaters, which is crazy. But I've seen the movie. I have definitely a lot of thoughts on it, and like we always do, we're gonna get into the good things and we're gonna get into the bad things. Let's do it. All right, so let's start off with the good here. I think the premise of this movie is actually pretty interesting. This idea of just all these kids in this one singular classroom just randomly going missing and nobody really knows what happened to them. You know, all of them, you get some video footage of them running out of the house at 3 a.m. in the morning and just kind of disappearing. I think that's definitely a good premise to go with. And I think, again, it's a pretty interesting story. I also really like the cast. This is a very strong cast. Julia Gardner, she's very good in this role. You know, she plays a very relatable school teacher at house, in the sense that, like, she has all these different, you know, just very relatable personality traits. Like, you know, she is very caring, but she's also kind of troublesome. You know, she's a bit of an alcoholic. She makes some bad choices, you know, but you can also feel bad for her too. You know, she's getting blamed for this whole thing, and this whole town is just turned on her and wants to blame her because all the kids were from her classroom, and you can really feel sorry for her and you know, feel bad for her because she's just going through it. Her stuff's getting vandalized, she's being threatened, getting phone calls, everything, and you can really feel sorry for her. Josh Brolin is also fantastic in his role, playing this really grieving father who's just so devastated about his kid going missing, and he really wants to figure out why, and you know, he's just searching to the ends of the earth to try and figure out why his kid's gone missing. And there's something very relatable in that. And I think they both work very, very, very well. I think the other standout is the lady who plays the grandmother, or the aunt rather, not the grandmother. Amy Madigan. She just does a brilliant job. She is so intimidating at times, and just so like, she has this really, really creepy vibe to her, and you can just, every time you see her on screen, your skin kind of crawls as to how just jarring and creepy she is. Especially when she's playing nice, you know, when she's just being this nice, kindly older lady, it gets really creepy. But then she has times where she can just flip like that, and she gets really sinister and just serious and mean, and she does a very, very good job. She's definitely very, very creepy. I also really love some of the comedy elements in this movie. This movie has a scene in it so funny that I was dying laughing, tears coming down my eyes for minutes on end, man. It's the scene near the end of the movie where Josh Brolin keeps punching the druggie after he's been, you know, I guess corrupted by the voodoo magic or whatever. He keeps punching him over and over, and then the druggie gets up and starts yelling, and he lunges at him, and they do it like 8 times. It's so funny. I haven't laughed that long in a theater in a very, very long time. Also, you know, just Josh Brolin being Josh Brolin is hysterical. Like, when he wakes up from the nightmare he's having, he just screams, "What the fuck?" It's just so funny. My whole theater was erupting in laughter at that scene. So they surprisingly did a very, very good job with comedy in this film. I think the effects and the gore in this movie is also very, very good. A lot better than I was expecting. A lot more than I was expecting. Some instances like Benedict Wong getting hit by the car, and just his whole head being exploded on the ground. Amy Madigan at the end, when the kids just completely tear her apart and they rip her to shreds. The 2 parents just stabbing themselves with forks and stuff. Some really, really nasty stuff, but it was the effects were very, very good. Looked very real. I also thought they did a pretty good job with the vibe and the atmosphere. This being in this small town, it felt very almost Halloween-esque. You know, they're just in this tiny town, not very large. And there's just certain shots of the school, and then just streets and roads, and it just had this very small town feel to it, and it felt good. So they did a very good job there. But in all honesty, I think the absolute standout of this film is seeing Josh Brolin and Julia Gardner working together. Now, they don't do it that much throughout the film, which will come back as a complaint later, but the bits and pieces that they do, I think they work very well together. I think they have really good chemistry, and they work as like this detective duo. For again, it's only like the final 15 minutes, but it works, you know, and I think they work very well together. Like I said, they have really good chemistry. I think they have this almost father-daughter feel. Not so much like a relationship type of feel, which I thought was different and interesting, because in a slasher, it's always it's always the final couple, right? But in this, it really feels like they don't feel like a couple. Again, they feel more like father and daughter, which I liked. I thought that was the biggest standout. Having said that, though, that is all the things that I liked. Now we are going to get in some of the things I wasn't too big of a fan of. All right, so my biggest problem with this film is the structure of the story, the way they go about telling the story. So this movie is told in about 7 different people's perspectives. In better words, the movie almost resets itself every 20 minutes to tell this story over like a 3-day period through someone else's perspective. You know, you see what they were doing throughout those 3 days. You meet these characters along the way, and then again, they just tell you what they were doing throughout those like couple of days, right? And I think after the 3rd or 4th, it really starts to get tiring, and it was getting to the point where I was just like rolling my eyes every time they would restart the story. I was like, all right, how many people's perspectives do they have to keep showing us? Like, it just got a little unnecessary. Like Benedict Wong, he was a principal at the school. It's like, why are we seeing his perspective? We don't need it, you know? And unfortunately, that leads into the next problem, is because they kept restarting the story over and over. This movie is very lengthy. This movie feels very long. Even though it's only about 2 hours, it feels like 3. This movie took forever to finish up in theaters, man. It just felt like it kept going on and on and on. And it got very tiring at the end. I was like, oh, come on, man. Just like, you know, it's never a good thing when you're sitting in the theater, you know, looking at your watch, so to speak, and you're just like, ugh, when is this going to be over? And that's how I was starting to get at the end of this movie. I was just like, I was about ready to just like, I was done. I wanted to get out of there. I was like, this movie's just going for too long, and it's not keeping me entertained enough. So that was a huge issue. I think another kind of big problem that I had is I wasn't a big fan of the way they kind of explain the story of what's going on, or rather, like I didn't like the aunt's motive, you know, and it really wasn't even explained that well. All we know is that she's dying, and she moves into the neighborhood to her daughter's house with the husband and the kid, and she is doing all this voodoo magic, and she's the one that makes the 17 kids, you know, come out of their homes at 3 a.m. and go to her. But it's never really explained that well as to why. We only know that she's dying. And they don't even express that that's the exact reason why. We just know that she's dying and she's doing random voodoo. And we don't even know if it's voodoo. We just assume that because that's just kind of how it looks. But they just didn't do a very good job, I thought, at explaining what the fuck was going on. And that made for a very underwhelming ending, in my opinion. It's like we got to the ending and it's just like, oh, okay. Like, I was expecting some big reveals to what was going on. And I think this is going to be the final point, but I think my expectations for this movie really, really left me feeling underwhelmed. I was going into this movie expecting it to be a 2-hour investigation with Julia Gardner and Josh Brolin. Like, this is the point I was making earlier. They don't work together for very long. They're only in it for the last 15 minutes together. I was expecting the whole movie, them working together, trying to solve what the hell's going on, and then finally they'd solve it at the end, and there's this big, you know, boom, like that. Oh, that's what was going on this whole time. Wow, God, I can't believe it. Like, you know, big surprise at the end. It was nothing like that, and so that left me pretty disappointed. So yeah, my expectations kind of led me astray there. But yeah, that's pretty much all the complaints I had. The only issue is that they're pretty big complaints, even though there's not too many of them. Overall, though, I did think this was a pretty fun, entertaining horror film for the most part. Again, it does have its issues. I gave it a 3.5 on Letterboxd. I did end up upping it to a 4, but I'm kind of like in the middle. I think I'm gonna go back down to a 3.5 though. A lot of these problems are just too big to ignore. But in no means is it a bad movie. I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's a fun watch for the most part, like I said. It's definitely worth it for Julia Gardner and Josh Brolin. Their acting is phenomenal. Again, it's a fun time. I would go check it out. But yeah, hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure to drop a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.